Hello everyone and welcome to this review. In today's video we're going to be reviewing Valkyria Chronicles for the PC. The game is by Sega and was released in 2014. It's a game about war, death, love, discrimination, but is it any good or not? Let's see, shall we? The game's story is set in Europa. This is a place that's loosely meant to be based on Europe during the early years of the Second World War. Because Europa has a large amount of Ragnite, the nation comes under attack from the Empire as their supply is dwindling, and essentially the Empire wants everything for itself. Most of the nations run and rely on Ragnite to make everything work, and basically because of this it's caused a war against all the nations, which results in the Empire attacking the Atlantic Federation, which in turn causes the situation that you're now in. The game's story has you take control of Welkin Gunther, who leads a group of the Gallian militia against the Empire to take back your homeland, and also eventually uncover the truth about the Valkyries and the Darksons. And while you're at it, you also find out about the lost chapters in history. It's a good story, which can get a tad complicated in places, and which has a strange course of being serious one moment, but then oddly flipping that on its head and being quite silly. It's a game based on war, and I was actually surprised to see Sega had the courage to mention the Holocaust in this game, and then actually show concentration camps and people starving and dying there. I do feel that it was quite brave of Sega to do this. However, doing something as serious as this in the game, but then going rather silly and having a pig with wings join the group named Hans, yeah, just kind of feels out of place, to be honest. The story does feel rather adult, with its themes of racism and purity, and about how people died during the war and everything else. But then the game's story can just throw the odd curveball in places which just feels out of place compared to everything else that the game represents. However, at the same time, it is a brilliant story, and if I'm quite honest, I cannot fault it. It is very well executed and very well told, and even with the odd few silly things thrown in here and there, it is nice to actually find a game like this that actually tells the truth about the war for a change. The game has a whole host of characters for you to play as in the game, ranging from lancers, scouts, snipers and more. Your main characters are Wokin and Alicia, along with Rosie and a few others. Wokin controls the squad's main tank, while everyone else is essentially a foot soldier who all have various roles within the team. You do get to go back to town in an early stage of the game and gain new members to the squad. You get to choose who you want in your group, and all have their own good and bad points. Some players work well with other characters, so it's best to have them work together on a mission if you want to get the best results from the squad. While some characters, however, hate certain other characters in the group, so if you have these two characters in the group who don't get along in a mission, you're probably going to end up getting negative points during combat, which can result in you losing the mission. There's a whole mix of characters to choose from, ranging from new squad members you get as the game's story progresses, to certain special characters who are only unlocked once you acquire certain things in each level. And while a lot of characters do kind of look the same body-wise, the game does do a good job of trying to give each character their own personality. Largo, for example, is the team's main lancer, and while the group has other lancers, you won't be getting them mixed up with each other. John has his own personality and characteristics, so you won't be getting him confused with Niles anytime soon. It's a good selection of characters who each have their own individuality, and it's nice to see that Sega tried this with so many different characters being in this game. It's a good selection of characters to choose from, and I'm pretty sure anyone who plays this game will just end up picking their favourite characters and using them as the main squad, so in theory, making your own Squad 7. The gameplay for the game itself is rather unique. It's essentially your standard turn-based system, where one side attacks and then after that side has taken a turn, it's the opponent's side to make a move. However, the other side can also attack you during your move as well, and vice versa. If your character is moving to capture an enemy base, for example, the enemy around that base can and will fire upon you if you're in range. The same goes if it's in the other order, and if you're stationed in one place and an enemy comes near you, you too will fire upon them while they're making their move. It's a game where you have to think about each action you're going to take, because if you make the wrong move, you could easily end up losing the mission, as you can get pinned down quite quickly and then fired upon from all angles. just because you have 1 or 2 tanks in your team, don't go thinking that this is going to be easy either. The game's difficulty can be really hard at times, especially if you're new to the series, and in some levels things are really against you, and you really do have to think technically to win. You can't really just go in guns blazing in this game, you do have to have a plan, because it really does just take one mistake to end up costing you the entire mission. This is a tactical game, so you are going to have to think about what you're going to do. The combat system is cleverly thought out, with orders that you can give your squad, upgrading certain gear, acquiring the enemy weapons, adding to the tank's artillery, and a whole host of other features. Combat itself usually involves you trying to take over enemy base camps or trying to survive an onslaught. Once in a while the game throws out something different, such as only going after one certain person on the map, or just trying to get to one location and hold it. The combat system itself is a unique turn on the turn-based system from role-playing games, and I myself thoroughly enjoyed it. The game's graphics are a mixture of pencil drawing and watercolour painting. The animation style is nothing short of beautiful and really well designed, and just really draws your eyes to the characters and everything around them. Think of it as cell shading animation, which you would get in something like Jet Set Radio, only taken to the next level, and that's generally what you would get. While the game's graphics do look nice and very beautiful, I didn't really like the whitish style borders that were around the whole screen. I do understand why it's there, as it is part of what makes the animation and appearance of the game in the first place. However, I did kind of feel to me personally that I was almost back in 1995, where PAL releases of games would have these awful borders at the top and bottom of the screen, which just ruined the game to me. I do understand that this is part of the game's animation, and I do think that it is very well represented and portrayed. However, I do feel it might have also been nice to have been given the option to zoom in a little, so that you can see everything itself in colour, rather than just having the centre part of the screen all in colour, while all the edges are kind of white and not coloured until you move into them. That being said, however, the game's graphics really are nothing short of breathtaking, and everything just runs so smoothly without any issues or lag. I ran this on my downstairs PC and had the game running at a smooth 60 frames per second with everything at 1080p, and not once did I experience any delays or hold-ups or any glitches. We now have to talk about the world of Europa that your characters travel in, because it really is amazing. You get so many locations to choose from, ranging from deserts, woods, open fields, mountains, cities, ruins, and dozens more. Sega really went to town on making all these locations and creating each one of them being different from the last. It's not just a copy and paste job. Each area looks and feels as if it's its own separate place, rather than some cut and paste job from a previous level. Each area is unique and has its own vantage and disadvantage points throughout each area. Characters can be walking along bombed, ruined cities one level, and then the next trying to climb mountains to reach anti-air guns the next. You never really feel bored while travelling the world of Europa and exploring each new location that the game offers you. It's rare to see something like this where each level is special and has its own unique personal charm about it. I found myself really enjoying each place that I was given access to. It's not like Star Wars Battlefront, for example, where everyone hates Jakku, or where no one plays Cloud City anymore. Each level is special and enjoyable, and offers its own technical advantages and its own disadvantages. The way that areas are created is also something special, and clearly a lot of time and effort went into creating each area. Ruined cities actually look like ruined cities, with blown up buildings and bomb damaging in places. Towns have sandbags in places, with soldiers using them for cover. Mountains have rocky areas that tank just refuses to go past, and desert locations will have sandstorms which will blind you. And there's just many more small details like this in every stage. It really is a beautifully created world, and I really do have to give credit to the team behind making this game, as they really did an amazing job creating the game's environment. Valkyria Chronicles is a masterpiece of a game from Sega, and really is worth purchasing. It's a great story with amazing animations and an amazing cast, which I really did grow to care about, and it really is something amazing to see that Sega also had the courage to mention the Holocaust, and also mention concentration camps, and just show how evil and how awful war can actually be. Because if we're being honest, I don't think most other companies would have had the courage to have done this. I would recommend this game to anyone who loves role-playing games, anime games, technical games, and hell, even if you're not a fan of any of these, I would still recommend you try it out, because the game really will surprise you with what it has to actually offer you. There are some issues with the game, however, such as the 30 frames per second versus the 60 frames per second issue. What I mean by this is that some people don't even get given the option of 60 frames per second, and it's rather odd as to why. Take myself for example. I have a GTX 970 gaming PC and a 1080p TV downstairs. Yet oddly, when I tried to play this at 60 frames per second, I wasn't given the choice, and in the end I had to adjust the game's INI files manually so that the game would run at 60 frames per second. You can select refresh rate, but usually this just makes everything run like a snail, and it just isn't worth it. While 30 frames per second is nice, this is PC Master Race, and I just want everything to run at 60 frames per second. Some people do get the option of 60 frames per second at the game's option menu, yet I don't understand why it's shown for some and not others at all. If I have a 1080p TV and can run everything else at 60 frames per second, this really shouldn't be an issue. We then also have to talk about the very serious game-breaking bug, which basically makes it so that the game can never load. I had this happen to me on my upstairs PC where I installed the game, downloaded it, tried to open it, and just got an error message. I think it was something about the system rendering not happening. I can't exactly remember what exactly it was, but at the time I did Google it, and I found that many other people had the same issue, and all these other people had higher end cards than my upstairs GTX 670. Some people suggested a fix is to change the compatibility mode to Windows 7 or 8 if you're on Windows 10. But for me personally, this didn't work. I'm not exactly sure why this issue happens, as at first I did think it was because I was running the game via a TV rather than a monitor, but other people running the game on a monitor were also getting the same issue. So basically, while the game works for me on my downstairs PC, it won't even load on my upstairs PC at all, and there doesn't seem to be an actual fix for it. Which could essentially mean you're playing Russian roulette with this game. You could buy the game, and it works no problems. However, you could also buy the game and find that it won't boot up at all for you. I doubt many people will be like myself and have more than one gaming PC to test this on, and I really don't want to put people off buying this epic game. It is a good game, and I would recommend it. I do feel that buyers should be warned about the slight risk, but Steam seems to feel otherwise, and don't mention it on the store page. If you are wanting to purchase a game, it usually comes on sale rather cheap when Steam has its offers on. And while I would recommend the game at full price anyways, just because of how fantastic the game is, I really don't want anyone taking a risk on something which could potentially not work for them. As I've said before, I don't want to put anyone off buying the game because it is a fantastic game. However, at the same time, you could possibly download the game, install it, and find you can't play it because for some reason the error's there and there isn't a fix. It really is a great game with a great story to tell and great characters, which I'm sure everyone will just grow to love. If I'm being honest, Valkyria Chronicles is one of my top 5 games, because it just really is that fantastic. So while I do recommend the game, I'm also advising any buyers out there that there is a slight risk. So just remember that upon purchasing. Well, that's it for this review guys. Thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and please subscribe.